Live from North Jersey, where Russell Wilson may be landing on Friday to visit the Giants for a second time in 2 years as a free agent. I am Pat Leonard, the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer, and this is Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard on my YouTube channel, PL on NFL, as well as on the Believe Network, brought to you by MyBookie, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, Estate 98 Coffee, and Sal Loretta for Men Luxury Menswear and Tailoring in Bergen County, New Jersey. What you all want to know is who will be the Giants quarterback? What will Aaron Rodgers decide? Will he pick the Giants? Will he pick the Steelers? Will he pick the Minnesota Vikings? Will he choose to retire? The Daily Mail posting a photo of Aaron Rodgers with a towel wrapped around him, headphones in, and a backwards hat on the beach. Considering playing for the Giants as Aaron Rodgers, considering the meaning of life out there, looking out at the ocean, seeing the Dolphins jump and wondering, should I go back to New York? Should I stay in the Big Apple and switch sides from Gang Green to Big Blue? On the one hand, Aaron Rodgers would be able to pair with Malik Neighbors. He would be relishing and welcoming the spotlight that did not go the way he foresaw when he joined Woody Johnson's Jets franchise. He would be joining a desperate GM and head coach in Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, who have through free agency been trying to plug the holes on their roster and make their best case for the Giants to be an attractive landing spot to go forth, win more games, and in the ideal world, also help them mentor along the way a younger quarterback who could take over in the future. But easier said than done. You come to New York, if you're Aaron Rodgers or you're Russell Wilson or you're any of the quarterbacks the Giants are considering, you're also risking going down with the ship. The Giants in a position where if they don't show progress, if they don't win, then everybody is going to be out of the building. And does Aaron Rodgers want his legacy to be that in his final 2 years of his career, he was on board when both the Jets and the Giants were forced to completely clean house? That is also a possibility. That is also on the table, especially as Rodgers considers the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that is far from perfect, also has offensive line and running game issues, but was in the playoffs last year, just acquired DK Metcalf to their offense and boast a top 10 defense. Minnesota would seem to be the obvious best team and most attractive spot, but do Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah want J.J. McCarthy sitting behind Aaron Rodgers? That's an interesting part about the quarterback carousel that the Giants are a part of right now. Is their two top options in Rodgers and Wilson are both guys who want to play. They're both players who are not looking to be bridge quarterbacks, who are not looking to be placeholders, who are not interested in playing 3 or 4 games and being benched for the rookie the way Eli Manning was in week 3 when Daniel Jones was drafted in the top 10 in 2019. Now, Joe Schoen did say he was looking for the quarterback who would help them win games this year, the best quarterback to help them win games now. And that is where the focus is as they also continue to try to get their quarterback of the future into the building. That's why they pursued Matthew Stafford. That's why Aaron Rodgers is next on the list. That's why Russell Wilson is not far behind, because there is pressure to win. There's a mandate to win. We don't know what John Mara will use to draw the line. How many wins does it take? When 3 wins retains a general manager and head coach, what stops you there? What stops you from losing all but 4 games this year and going to year 5? We don't know where the buck stops now when it comes to John Mara, when it comes to the Tisch family, and what they won't and will tolerate. Because as we saw in 2024, the Giants were willing to tolerate basically any type of dysfunction and losing that we could have ever seen. And a lot of us couldn't even predict it was going to go that bad, even if we thought it was going to be a down year. But as we sit here in the uncertainty of the quarterback swirl, there's a lot to talk about. There's some questions, but there's also some exciting signings the Giants have made. There are players that I really like that the team has added here. There have been changes in philosophy and strategy from the general manager and from the front office that, let's be honest, they're learning on the job. This is a first-time general manager and head coach, and they're being given the rope and the leeway by ownership to make the types of mistakes and survive them that previous regimes have not been able to see through. Normally, these are the types of killer mistakes that, first of all, nobody makes when it comes to letting Saquon Barkley, Xavier McKinney both walk to first-time All-Pro seasons, but not to mention Saquon helping your rival win a Super Bowl. That said, that's how Joe Schoen can be in a spot where you don't value safety and now you do, where you don't value a locker room leader and now you do. These are things that we have seen kind of an about face from the Giants. It's better to have learned from a mistake than just to continue to repeat it. But we will get into all of these signings and these decisions and talk about what the depth chart looks like now, where their needs still exist. What does this mean for the draft? And of course, you know that because we are live and I'm not on the phone, I'm not texting with sources at the moment, and I'm not, watching 3 shows while monitoring Twitter and this and that, that while we are live, the big news is going to drop. Hopefully it comes to my phone. If it doesn't, we will cover it all live here. Thank you for being here, NFL fans, Giant fans. We'll also talk about some of the biggest moves that happened around the league. We don't just need to talk Giants here, but that is our wheelhouse, our bread and butter. Having been the Giants beat writer and NFL columnist for the Daily News beat writer since 2016 season, and now NFL columnist going on, I don't know, about 5 years or so now, covering the entire league. We've been at the Super Bowl. We've been at the NFL Combine. And we're continuing to walk you through free agency all the way to and through the NFL draft into the 2025 season. I have players that I want to point out that I love that the Giants added. I have some players that I want to express some reservations about. I have some analysis on some of these additions that the Giants have made so far that will give you some pros and cons, right? And it will describe to you, I hope, a full picture of what the Giants look like and where they still need to go. This conversation is brought to you by MyBookie, Boom Chaga, Estate 98, and Sal Loretta for Men. I love seeing all the comments in the queue. We'll get to all of them. Barbara, G-Men, Ken, Rosario, Jacob, everybody. I see you there. We're going to get to you. Jacob actually pointed out right off the bat, smack that like and sub button for the best reporter in the biz. Always appreciate that, Jacob. Always appreciate you telling people, reminding people to subscribe if they don't already, to hit those like buttons while we are live. And remember, this queue starts to fill up with questions and comments and insights from you, the fans, the diehards, the loyal listeners and viewers. So if you have a comment or question that I am not getting to in a timely fashion, maybe you got to go and you can't stay for the full live. If you want your comment or question answered first, or you just want to support the show, you can purchase a super chat or super sticker, and your comment or question will be answered first. It will be addressed immediately, or if I'm on a certain topic, it'll be the next one in line. It will jump the queue. That's a great way to support our channel and also to have me get right to what you're asking about. But of course, another great way to support us is by supporting our sponsors. MyBookie had you winning bunches of money this past NFL season if you were tailing me with my Pat's Picks promo code. And that's the code that gets you as 50% match on your first deposit all the way up to $2,000. So if you deposit $2,000 now at MyBookie with my code Pat's Picks, you'll get an extra $1,000 in your account to play with. Perfect time to do it now with conference tournaments happening, March Madness around the corner, the Masters coming, lots of props with the NFL draft. And of course, for the upcoming 2025 NFL season, from Super Bowl odds on down, you can also create your own props. You're not going to win bigger anywhere else, and you're not going to find more player props anywhere than at MyBookie. So go to MyBookie now. Pat's Picks is the promo code, and win big. You can see them up there in the corner of the screen. Another sponsor we're grateful to is the Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink right here on the screen. Natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You see it right here over my shoulder as well. This is the bag, Mushroom Super Drink. This has a bunch of these smaller packets, 14 liquid packets to be exact. And Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink is loaded with antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. I pour it in my coffee every morning. You can pour it in some water or tea or coffee in the early afternoon to get a pick-me-up there. It can lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. So you're going to go to boomchaga.com now, and you're going to use the code Talkin Ball 25 or the QR code on your screen and get 25% off your first order on the subscribe and save option. So your first order will get 25% off that bag. And I promise you, you'll stay subscribed and you'll want more. You'll want some of that monthly subscription coming to your door. If not, you can cancel the subscription immediately and no harm, no foul. But Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, boomchaga.com. Start feeling the difference today at Boom Chaga. And of course, last but not least, number one, Salaretta for Men, Midland Park, New Jersey, Bergen County up here, luxury menswear and tailoring. They're the people, the experts who keep me looking fresh and clean for the arrivals at MetLife Stadium and anywhere on the road that the Giants play, who keep me looking fresh at Super Bowl Radio Row, and who continue to support our podcast, our show. And you've seen the shows that we've been able to produce lately. But Benny Fowler and me, Benny Fowler and I have had Darius Slayton on. We had Justin Simmons on the other day, and the A-list guests continue to roll in. Really excited about what we're continuing to build. Salaretta for Men. Go there, tell them Pat sent you from Talkin Ball, and grateful to them for supporting us from our Super Bowl trip down to New Orleans along the way here. And last but not least, Estate 98 Coffee, estate98.com/Talkin Ball. Natural specialty coffee concentrate, great for a quick cup of Joe. 10 seconds actually will make you a quick cup of hot or iced delicious coffee with Estate 98 coffee concentrate. It also makes a great espresso martini mixer. All right. So thrilled that our sponsors are on board. Thrilled that you all are here. Good numbers tonight. Not surprised based on the activity of the Giants during this cycle. The lingering questions about the quarterback position with Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson and other names, if those both fall through, as well as a lot of interesting moves and decisions and player movement around the league that we will get into. But first, we will go to Barbara. She says, Pat, no decent quarterback wants to come here, and this is a weak quarterback draft. We are in quarterback hell. Barbara, thanks for kicking us off. I know you're frustrated, and to be honest, this is, again, one of those polarizing moments where you hear a lot of different comments and opinions from a lot of different people. For example, I have some Giants fans in my life, friends of mine, ticket holders, longtime fans. One fan texted me today and said, if the Giants sign Rodgers, I will not be watching them all season. How did we get here? Another fan said, I may have to join you on that. They would be better off setting up a good draft for the following season. And so on the one hand, you have fans who are hoping the Giants get Aaron Rodgers because that feels like the best chance to have a good product on the field this coming season. On the other hand, there are fans who don't want the drama, whatever distractions come with it. They don't want a player in the building who isn't what he used to be, who is a 4-time MVP, but they worry, having watched very closely what happened with the Jets, what that could mean. Then again, there is the flip side, Barbara, right? There is the flip side of people who feel, if we don't get Aaron Rodgers and if it's not Russell Wilson, where do we go from there? Yes, you may be able to find a good mentor for a young quarterback in a Cooper Rush, a Jameis Winston, somebody in that mold. But if you said Joe Shane and the Giants, and they know they're trying to build a team that can win before they even get to the draft on the field in week 1 here in 2025, if you miss on Rodgers and Wilson, to a lot of fans, that will feel like they did not accomplish that. The team is not prepared for that, and it will be a doomsday scenario. Now, obviously, I think, Barbara, to answer your question and address your point here, I think it's a very real thing, what you're describing, that at the moment, like, listen, if Aaron Rodgers decides he's going to play for the Giants, then Aaron Rodgers chose the Giants, right? And then a 4-time MVP, former Super Bowl champion, wanted to play for the New York Giants, right? If Rodgers decides he does not want to play for the Giants and he either wants to play for the Steelers or the Vikings, or he'd rather retire, the combination of Stafford turning the Giants down plus Aaron Rodgers turning the Giants down, then you're left in a position where the Russell Wilson, his flight pattern, let's call it, from Cleveland to New York, if that doesn't pan out, it's a very shaky situation right now where the Giants are waiting to hear from Aaron Rodgers, and so are the Steelers. Obviously, as we talk about this this could all be old news in 10 minutes if Aaron Rodgers finally makes a decision, if he finally walks off the beach and uh, hoses off his feet so he doesn't get sand in the house and towels off, walks upstairs, grabs his landline telephone and calls Joe Shane, then we're talking about something different, right? Now we're on to what is the season, projecting the season and what it's going to look like and things solidifying. But at the moment, it's so uncertain. And so right now on the quarterback situation, there's more uncertainty than certainty. But as we continue to talk about it tonight, I will give you my best information on where it's going and on where we stand. G-Men says, what's going on, Pat? Any more information you can give us on the aggressive pursuit of Rodgers by the Giants? Are the Giants putting pressure on him to make a decision before Friday by bringing in Russ? G-Men, the way I see it, and so, yes, as you're pointing out right now, and as I alluded to earlier, Adam Schefter reported that Russell Wilson has flown to Cleveland. He's going to be visiting with the Cleveland Browns tomorrow, Thursday, March 13th. And then he is scheduled to fly to New York/New Jersey on Thursday evening to visit the Giants on Friday. We all know that Russell Wilson visited the Giants last year at the start of the free agent negotiation period and leading into free agency. And frankly, he would have been the Giants quarterback if they were able to guarantee him the starting job. But they had Daniel Jones under contract. They could not guarantee that to Russell Wilson. And so therefore he went to Pittsburgh. So we know the interest is there. Brian Daboll spoke very glowingly of Russell Wilson this past season, prior to and after the Steelers beating the Giants head to head. And so he also mentioned many times about needing better quarterback play. And we know that Russell Wilson was, in some ways the apple of his and the Giants' eye last year before they weren't able to make that work out. So that's genuine interest from both sides. Are the Giants trying to force Rodgers to make a decision? I would say my read on that is just simply, first of all, start with Russell Wilson. Forget the Giants for a second. To me, now, not that he's not the same as Saquon Barkley last year. Don't get me wrong. But Russell Wilson being allowed to just hit free agency and go and visit the Steelers' biggest rival, the Browns, and scheduled to visit the Giants. It's hard to see him returning to the Steelers if they weren't just going to re-sign him and prevent him from hitting free agency. Now, obviously, nothing's impossible. But after after negotiating with Justin Fields and then Fields choosing the Jets, for the Steelers then to let Russell Wilson hit free agency and say, oh, you're taking a flight to Cleveland and you're taking a flight to New York. Okay, goodbye. Have a good time. It would be highly unusual for Russell Wilson to take both of those visits and come back to Pittsburgh and resign. And all of that is to say, in my mind, this starts with Russell Wilson's got to make a decision for himself. So Russell Wilson could be doing this for one of two reasons. Either he believes that Rodgers is a foregone conclusion in Pittsburgh, and therefore he knows he's not going back there because of that, or he and the Steelers have decided they're not going to be a match this season, even though they were for a part of last season. And he's just proceeding with his own process. So from the Giant standpoint, if Russell Wilson is now looking for his landing spot, forget what is happening with Aaron Rodgers. The Giants can't not have Russell Wilson visit during that tour, right? They don't know what Rodgers is going to do, and they can't be held hostage by that. And are you putting pressure on Rodgers to make a decision by having Russell Wilson in? Yeah, I think a little bit for sure. But I think it's also just if Russell Wilson's going about his process right now because Rodgers is delayed, and let's face it, Russell Wilson is now a free agent. So this is the time he goes and does these things. At this point now you're looking at in a scenario where Wilson is picking his teams and the Giants want to be on the board and want to have that conversation. So, if Aaron Rodgers had chosen the Giants already, they wouldn't be having the conversation. But now to be able to say, no, we're not having that convo with you, Russ, because we're waiting on Aaron, that would be silly for the Giants to do, right? They have to have that conversation. So it does put some pressure on Aaron Rodgers, but that doesn't have to be the motivation of it. They're just having the conversation. Daniel, thank you so much for the $20 super chat there, Daniel. Really appreciate you. Good to see you. He says, do you agree with re-signing Darius Slayton? It's proof positive this team hasn't learned anything, and it's worse behind the scenes than people even think. Interesting and good question, Daniel. And thank you for getting me over to some of the Giants' moves so far, because obviously the quarterback position is the most important, and that's going to drive a lot of this conversation. But really excited to get into some of my insights on these players. You asked about Darius Slayton. So his contract, 3 years, $36 million, $22 million guaranteed, though if he stays for those first 2 seasons, I believe it ends up essentially being the 26. So how do I feel about Darius Slayton resigning? First of all, my primary takeaways on his resigning. Number one, this is more money than I expected Slayton to get, especially from the Giants. I think that, the Giants looked at Darius Slayton and they looked at what they did wrong with Saquon Barkley last year. And what they did is they let a good player who was critical to the locker room's makeup and culture leave. And they undervalued that player. And that's the only reason the player did leave. In fact, they basically disrespected the player in ways that they handled the negotiations at times. And also, suppressed his market. So you look at the Darius Slayton signing and you say, okay, if we're the Giants and we're really looking at ourselves in the mirror and saying, what have we done wrong? They clearly recognized, or it was pointed out to them by others internally, we cannot do this again. We cannot let a player go and demonstrate that we have no semblance of an understanding of what a key human in our building means to the team and to the culture and to the organization. If we have a well-rounded player and person who players and teammates and coaches respond to and respect, we have to demonstrate that we value that in the building. So re-signing Darius Slayton for that money, number 2 wide receiver money, that's asking more of him as a player on that contract, no doubt. I'm more surprised on the other end that Darius re-signed with them. But again, like I said, this is a lot of money at $12 million a year for him to get with the Giants. And I can see why he would stay for that money. But having done that interview with him, with Benny Fowler, doing that interview and talking to Darius and him talking about prioritizing winning and sounding like he was very eager to be somewhere that was a winning culture and organization, it did surprise me that he resigned. But what I will say is that about halfway through last season, when things started going poorly, or started going poorly, but really hit the skids, Slayton started doing what Saquon did at the end of his time here. He started kind of carrying the Giants' water and standing up and speaking positively about the organization, more positively than, frankly, he had prior, and that really anyone else was defending Daboll, was defending where the organization was compared to where it had been in the past. It was really kind of stumping for what is here and what could be better if they did more, some different things with the organization, with the quarterback position, things like that. And simultaneously, the Giants put him forth and, he started making a case for himself for that NFLPA award. He ended up winning the Alan Page Community Award with the NFL Players Association and the union. So it felt like he was helping the Giants out and the Giants were helping him out. And there was kind of like a synergy between them where it was like, you scratch my back, I scratch yours to kind of get to the finish line. Now, like I said, Saquon did that at the end too, and it didn't help him get more money out of the Giants, right? Um, but there's also some self-interest in the player's position at that point, because when you do that, you look like a good teammate, a good employee, and somebody who's being, loyal to the Giants organization. And so that can help you, whether it's with your own team in negotiations or with outside teams. So I didn't necessarily view that as he was definitely coming back. Like I said, my interview with him, I thought he was gone based on what he said. He did, though, make comments like, if I were to stay, the Giants would have to do X, Y, and Z. He did mention building around, ideally, a younger quarterback or a younger veteran or somebody that they could build the program and the system and the offense around, right? So I like Slayton. I'm glad he's back for locker room purposes. He's a good person to have on the team. Um, he's a good person to have on any team. I do think he would have helped himself by going somewhere else. But like I said, this is one of those examples of the Giants making clear they understand how critical of a mistake they made letting a guy like Barkley go when he meant so much to the locker room. Even McKinney at the safety position, and we'll get into that more, but even from that standpoint, the guys who are leaders, who are breaking down the huddle, who are some of your top players, who are consistent, who set a good example, it is alarming that, along with all those other things, this current Giants regime really has screwed with Slayton, including forcing him to take a pay cut and having him as a healthy scratch when they first got here in 2022. So, a lot of factors pointed to him not being here, but, I didn't, I would say this too. I reported very early on, or by, 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, that, they were looking at guys like Josh Palmer, some other wide receiver 2 options out there. And I think also when you looked at the market, and Palmer got good money too, I think from the Giants standpoint, they also looked at it and said, if the wide receiver 2 options we've narrowed down to that we like around the league are also projected to get this certain amount of money, if we're comfortable paying Darius that, he's a known commodity and a guy that we like and who provides some consistency and stability and leadership, and we have a good firm handle on who he is. So I think that's where it kind of landed as well. Let's see. We have a couple more super chats. Thank you so much, guys. I'll get to all the questions, but the super chats get addressed first. Thank you so much. Tuto, so loyal. Legend here in Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, as well as throughout the Giant fan base community. Massive salutes and respect to Big Boss Pat and all diehard Giants fans across the pond. Greetings from our entire rugby club training in Germany. Please pray for my upcoming victims, mate, and slap all those stinky Boyd's loses. I love Tuto still bringing the Eagle shade even after that Super Bowl, the diehard Giants fan. And as well, yes, we will all say a prayer for Tuto's next victims. Like I always say, we need more guys on the Giants that have Tuto's attitude. All right. Chronicle says Slayton could have gotten more money on the market. Gabe, I don't think so. I don't know if somebody reported that he had turned down more money, but I know, talking to people around the league and looking at some of the other deals that came in, that this was good money for Slayton to get. Getting 12 million a year. I think some of the sources that I talked to, they were not expecting, as we look at the phones here, sorry. They were curious where Slayton would land in that, 10, 11, like I think 12 was at a high end of a good range for him. So, I don't think it's like he didn't take like a pay cut to come back. Let's see. All right. Gabe points out, this is happening while we are live. Thank you, Gabe. Appreciate you. He says, Greg Van Roten is back. He is. Greg Van Roten finalizing a deal to remain with the Giants, according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. Greg Van Roten, who actually became a vocal voice in the locker room, a locker room that was, missing some leadership and some veteran knowledge. He was stepping up and speaking often behind the scenes in the locker room. Interesting because Joe Shane basically declared that an open and vacated spot on the first day of the offseason. Seemed pretty clear that they intended to move on. I know they were in on Will Freeze, who ended up signing with the Vikings. So the Giants did go hard after some targets on the right guard market. But I told you guys this before. So first of all, this is disappointing from the standpoint of if this is their best option at right guard, not ideal. I do think the one major missing element of the Giants offseason that I'm still as concerned about now as I was 2 weeks ago is I think they're functioning as if their offensive line largely is good enough and they just needed to add a couple pieces. I don't think that is the case. We'll see who ends up correct. This adds to that concern for me. I have said this before, though. I'll say this again. They really like Jake Kubas. Would not surprise me if, this becomes a competition where Kubas is encouraged at every turn to grab this job, right? Like that's, or at least to be, you don't want to be in a rotation, but he brings some nasty. I know he's a young developmental player, but that's a guy that I feel like is going to get on the field at some point, especially if this is the Giants' only solution when it comes to plugging the right guard spot, creating competition. Of course, we're waiting to see what happens with Evan Neal. If he is, in fact, kicked inside to guard and given a chance there, that could also be the solution. You could end up with the old three-man competition for right guard between Greg Van Roten, Jake Kubas, and Evan Neal. Who knows? They obviously added a couple offensive tackles. Gabe says, Pat, not everything has to go back to 26. Gabe, I'm not going to apologize for this, but the fact of the matter is when you let a guy who almost became MVP of the league go to your rival and win a Super Bowl and become a first-team All-Pro, and when a large part of your own team's story that season when he leaves is that you don't have any leadership because you let him leave and you lost more games because you let him leave, that's a huge story. It is the story. And if you don't want to hear about it, it's going to be a conversation somewhere else because it's a huge part of what the Giants were. It's a huge part of how they made a mistake. And it is a part of the lessons learned. And listen, Joe Shane, Gabe, has made the comments to us. He said, I'm going back and looking at what I've done wrong and what I can do better. And any good general manager, any good executive, any good leader is going to do that. And Joe Shane had to look at how he operated last year and say, what do I think I did right? What do I think I did wrong? And that's an element of that. Before I get to the next question, I wanted to talk about the player who is exciting me the most right now with the Giants signings. And I'll preface this by saying, so we were just talking about the Giants offensive line and how we all know how important it is to have a strong offensive and defensive front. That is where these games, these championships are won and lost. You've seen it in recent years from the Eagles, the Chiefs, the 49ers being in contention year after year, the Dallas Cowboys winning a lot of games, even though obviously they've fallen flat on their face in the playoffs. You see the good teams that slip up when they have weaknesses up front. Then again, you look at the Baltimore Ravens, who run through the entire league all the way up to falling short in the postseason with one of the better offensive lines and pushing people around in football. And I bring this all up to say that the Giants up front, offensive and defensive, were not good enough last season. And my favorite signing, therefore, so far that the Giants have made in free agency, yes, they've spent more money on Javon Holland at safety. Yes, they spent more money at corner on Paulson Adebo. Yes, they re-signed Darius Slayton to big money. But my favorite signing so far is Chauncey Golston from the Dallas Cowboys. See, Golston is the type of player that the Giants were flat out missing last year. And we talk about what it means to be a physical, tough, and dominant team. And one observation that I and others on the beat and around the Giants have made in recent years is that sometimes you feel like you're standing there when the Giants walk into a game, and then you watch the road team, the visiting team, walk by you. And the visiting team, and Charlotte Carroll and I have talked about this before. The visiting team's offensive and defensive linemen, with the exception of like a Dexter Lawrence, obviously. Dexter, it falls into this category. But a lot of times, some of these teams, they just look bigger, more imposing. They walk past you and you think, I am not excited to block that guy 50 times today. And Chauncey Golston is that kind of guy. He's 6'5". He's 268. He plays inside and the edge, played more edge this past year. Defensive lineman who you can move around. You can have him rush from the inside. But if he's like your weak side defensive end, for example, this is the type of player who, if you noticed when the Giants signed him, the Dallas Cowboy fan base was not happy. And that's because this is a good player that the Dallas Cowboys are letting go. And this is not, if the Giants are the kind of team in recent years that it feels like when they sign a player who's a bigger name or Giants fans want to get excited about, it turns out there was a key reason the team they signed let him go. And obviously Adebo, Holland, those are both players that in some ways fall a little bit into that category, even though they obviously have a lot of talent. But Chauncey Golston is a player that the Dallas Cowboys were not excited about letting Chauncey Golston go. Like, they liked Chauncey Golston. The issue is they have more players that they're either paying or have to pay. They're in a position where they're paying Dak Prescott a max contract. They're paying CeeDee Lamb a max contract. We expect, at least as of right now, they're eventually going to be paying Micah Parsons a max contract. And so, yes, they have to replenish those lines and they have to find those young players on cost control to do it. But if you noticed, what ended up happening was they drafted Marshawn Kneeland in the second round last year in order to essentially prepare and plan for their depth up front. They can't pay everybody there and across the roster. And so what ended up happening is the Giants capitalized here, and I'm giving the Giants kudos and credit for this. The Giants capitalized on a value play here. Now, they are paying a guy who has been a backup starter money, right? So they're betting on him ascending, on earning that contract, on being even more than he was with the Cowboys. But these were positions and the types of players that the Giants were ignoring and not aware existed and not fully prioritizing last season. They felt after they made the Brian Burns trade, they had Dexter Lawrence. They had spent a fifth overall pick on Kayvon Thibodeau a couple years ago. And they plugged some holes with, a veteran like Rakeem Nunez-Roches, Elijah Chapman, they got excited about as an undrafted rookie free agent. But of course, remember, Ashawn Robinson was gone on the inside. You had Leonard Williams, who was traded, and yeah, you got a second round pick for it. But again, interior, defensive ends, guys who can play inside. The Giants were badly missing bodies there. They were not fully addressing not only the rotation that they didn't have of kind of horses in the middle and up front, but they didn't even have a capable run-stopping, well-rounded group of starting players on the defensive line last year. And they were one of the poorer run defenses in the league until the last few weeks of the season because of that. So all of that is to say, I talked to people around the league and tried to figure out how the heck this guy became a Giant. And really, it just boils down to that. It boils down to good player. Cowboys are paying a lot of money out to a lot of people. Cowboys drafted Marshawn Kneeland on a rookie cost-controlled contract and would have loved to keep Golston, but they can't pay everybody. And therefore, the Giants paying more money to Golston than his role had been previously, projecting him to continue to ascend as a promising young player, former third-round pick out of Iowa, and in foreseeing that this player's ability to help in both run and pass, but also, and I mean this sincerely, just his ability to be an athlete at that size, right? Like Dexter Lawrence is unusual in how athletic he is at the size he is. And if you continue to put players like Dexter Lawrence on the front, you're not going to find many Dexter Lawrences. But players like Chauncey Golston, they're going to complement Dexter Lawrence in a way that is going to end up, augmenting the players next to him and around him. And so I'm excited about Chauncey Golston, and that so far has been my favorite signing. All right. I got excited about that one. That was a little bit of a riff there, but I'm excited about Golston. He was a player that I really wanted to talk about. All right. Let's get on to more questions here. Let's see. All right. So FYI, right now, to talk about the Greg Van Roten signing for a second, at the moment, with Van Roten back, let's assume that the starting 5 offensive line is the same. Let's just, for argument's sake, let's assume it's the same going into this season, right? At the moment, there are no new additions to the offense. They have added, of course, Browns offensive tackle James Hudson III, 2-year deal, $11 million, $3.5 million guaranteed. And today they added another tackle, Stone Forsythe from the Seahawks, although not that PFF grades are the end-all, be-all, but Stone Forsythe, I believe, I looked it up. There were 85 offensive tackles who played 25% of their team's snaps this past season. There were 85 offensive tackles who played 20% of their team's offensive snaps this season. And Stone Forsythe graded as number 84 out of 85. So what these signings were, though, obviously, with Hudson and Forsythe, is that's an attempt to throw bodies at the swing tackle position to create competition. And, Forsythe is a monster. I mean, he is 6'8", 307. So, you're talking about adding 2 backup tackles in free agency here. The Giants, of course, again, Gabe, this is why it's important to reference what happened last year in the context and put it into context for this year. Their mistakes included continuing to count on Josh Ezeudu as the swing tackle. And that was not wise. It was not prudent. And so, with him and Evan Neal as the backups last year, it didn't get it done. And so now the Giants are making different kinds of attempts at investments in that position. I don't know if these players will turn out to be better, but they're making an effort there at least. Although obviously not big splashes, but Hudson's getting real money. Like that's $3.5 million guaranteed for Hudson, and it could be up to $6 million for this season. So Hudson got real money. All right, let's see. Ken Peters has been waiting for a while. Thanks, Ken, for the question and for being here. He says, Pat, if Rodgers signs with the Steelers, don't you think they should go no higher than 12 or 15 million for Wilson? His only other option is Cleveland, and they are capped out. Would you trade a 4th for Cousins? I would absolutely trade a 4th for Kirk Cousins. Yeah, absolutely. I also, it's still speculation or informed speculation on my part. I'm still curious. I want somebody to tell me, and I continue to ask around. I want somebody to tell me if anyone has called the Cardinals and asked the question, will you trade us Kyler Murray? I just want to know the answer to it. Because like I said, I've talked to people who are wondering if that phone call would yield any results. But, I've asked some people don't think it would, but, still curious about that, still working on that. Yes, I would absolutely trade a 4th round pick for Kirk Cousins. Um, based on where the Giants based on where the Giants have been searching for QBs, the level that they're looking for, um, what they're seeking as far as somebody who can win games and also help a young guy out and help a young guy grow. You could do a lot worse right now than Kirk Cousins. Um, Cousins does run a little bit hot, which, I like from a competitive standpoint, as far as like, in game being intense and wanting to win and that kind of thing. So it would be interesting to see how he and Dable would coexist if they were working together and it didn't go well. But at this point, you just need somebody who can sling the ball and win you games, and that's where they're at, right? So Jacob says, what's your grade so far for the offseason? Mine is A minus. Does Russell flying in for a meeting indicate they already know Rodgers' decision? It may, on Rodgers from Russell's part. As far as I understand, the Giants have been waiting to hear from Rodgers one way or another. Grade for the offseason so far. I don't know. I don't know if I'm not going to grade it because they haven't made a quarterback yet. They haven't gotten a quarterback yet. So like, Jacob, I don't think it's really fair to grade them one way or another without the QB. I would say as far as the signings go, the one that excited me was Golston. Like Golston felt like a really smart signing. I love that signing. Adebo is, it's a good swing at a good corner. He's coming off an injury and he commits a lot of penalties, even though he's really talented. And, like I talk to people who really love his game. They say he's a really long corner. He's very quick downhill. Some people say like he'll look like the best player in your secondary out there until the ball goes up for a 40-yard pass down the field and he drags the receiver down for pass interference So listen, corners commit penalties. It happens, but Adebo has had an issue with that. So we'll see. Also, you have Javon Holland, the safety, obviously a major investment there. So it was 3 years, $54 million for Adebo, $38.5 million guaranteed. Holland at safety from the Dolphins is 3 years, $45.3 million, including $30.3 million guaranteed. Holland is a talented player. He's a guy who was a captain and then was not named a captain last year. I know he was one of the players who was most vocal about not liking playing for Vic Fangio before Fangio left, went to the Eagles and built a Super Bowl winning defense. Holland sounds to me like a personality, a guy with talent who will be interesting, engaging, and maybe at some times potentially, controversial. Honestly, it sounds a lot like a Xavier McKinney, but, not the same exact player. But in terms of McKinney was a little bit different, but was himself, was true to himself, was genuine, was a competitor. And he took ownership of the defense and he relished being a captain and standing for the team and speaking his mind and those kind of things. I'll be interested to see how Holland fits, how he and Adebo kind of work with this secondary, with the room, how they rub off on a Deonte Banks, on a Tyler Nubin. And then, really, I think my number one observation is it is very interesting that the Giants did so much addressing to the defense after having the second worst scoring offense in the league, last year. I think it's very clear that they intend to use the draft and some targeted additions and signings when it comes to the offense. But the draft, obviously, you think about, they definitely need to add a running back this offseason, at least one. They definitely need to add another receiver. They definitely need to draft offensive and defensive linemen, right? I would be, frankly, drafting another corner, so they're definitely going to attack the offense in the draft, no doubt about it, not to mention hopefully a quarterback of the future somewhere. But That's what I think is interesting. Yeah, the Roy Robertson Harris signing, 2 years, $9 million, 5.3 guaranteed. I'm not sure that's going to be an excellent signing, but it does give you a veteran body who has played snaps and real snaps. Chris Board at linebacker will be interested to see. He's a special teamer who has, had a cup of coffee on defense. Essentially, we'll see how much he does on defense, maybe in spot duty there. But on offense, really, it's just been Slayton, Manhertz, who helps, mostly blocking, some red zone targets, Hudson, Forsyth, and DeVito. And then, the most obvious, the one I thought was the most obvious re-signing was Amir Smith-Marset, who just re-signed today. The return man obviously has receiving ability too, but with his returning ability, I think he was the most obvious free agent of all the Giants outgoing free agents that would re-sign, in my opinion. And you saw that happen, as well as Jamie Gillen and Casey Kreider. All right. Let's see. Antonio asking about guard. Yeah, well, they didn't sign anyone at the top of that market, and they end up bringing back Greg Van Roten, as we just found out, thanks to Gabe keeping his eye on Twitter as we are live here on Talkin Ball. All right, let's see. Next up, we have Hooks, Rubs, and Spices. We Smoke Meat says, hey, Pat, can't be on to watch the show, but saying hello. Thanks for all your hard work this crazy week. Go Giants. Thank you, Hooks. Really appreciate you for all your support. Hope you can catch up on our show either later tonight or tomorrow. All right. Beast of the East says, Pat, I think you should sponsor Dude Wipes because it's kind of crappy not having a QB right now. Oh, I walked right into reading that full comment. All right, Beast, you got me. Michael says Giants can't land a quarterback in free agency. Do they trade up or stay at 3 and hope one is there? Oh, so you said, let's say the Giants can't land a quarterback in free agency. Do they trade up or stay at 3 and hope one is there? Well, let's put it this way. First of all, Michael, if let's say Cam Ward's the guy they want, if the Titans want him too, then they're not giving you that number 1 pick to take him, right? So that's the one thing. I do think, though, the worse the quarterback they acquire in free agency becomes, the more likely it is they use the number 3 pick on a QB. Now, you hate that because you can't really, if you're a good team or a good operation, you can't let, your evaluations are your evaluations. So if you don't think there's a quarterback worth number 3 that's still on the board when you pick at 3, you don't just force the position, right? Now, I will say Jackson Dart's name has really heated up. That Shedeur Sanders, obviously his stock's like all over the place. But I've talked to several people who have said that Jackson Dart is their QB2 on the board behind Ward. And I talked to one person today who said that, they love Dart above all of them, just as like the total package of player, person, coachability, all those things. Now, Cam Ward will be the first quarterback off the board, but just to give you an idea of where, Dart is, like this person actually told me today, he thinks that, that Jackson Dart is going to be the Bo Nix of this year's draft, meaning the quarterback who people thought was, mid to late first, early second, who ended up going in the top 15 and, challenging for the offensive rookie of the year type player. So that's an interesting one to remember. Pat Wilson is a terrible quarterback, said GCN. Just draft a young QB. Host says if Tomlinson doesn't win a playoff game this year. Oh, if Tomlin doesn't win a playoff game this year, I think he's out too. Might be our next coach, Mike Tomlin. Gotcha. Yeah, well, didn't he just get an extension? But I think didn't Mike Tomlin just get an extension last year? Am I making that up? But yes, it does feel like now his job security is kind of a conversation, an annual conversation now. They were in the playoffs last year, though, and they do have some elite talent on the team. But yes, far from perfect. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good point. That's actually an interesting argument for him keeping his job. And there was somebody else this year who didn't come free. Um, but yeah, it's like basically, like Stefanski, for example. This year, it felt like it could have been his last year with the Browns, but then it becomes clear, like, if you fire this guy, he's going to be hired. Like, there's going to be like 10 teams trying to hire him. When that happens, maybe it's not the coach, right? Brett says, Pat, what do you think about trading the great Andrew Thomas? Uh, you mean trade well, listen, I know where you're coming from, Brett, because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And you're saying get something for him before you can get nothing for him. But let's also face facts that the Giants have played, slightly competitive to capable football with Andrew Thomas in the game at times in the last couple of years. But what has happened? The second he gets hurt or goes down or is compromised, everything just explodes with the offense. Now, they still don't have a good offense when he's on the field. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that like they had an explosive offense when he was out there and they didn't when he wasn't, but it's obvious how much they miss him and his talent when he's not there. All of that is to say, if you trade Andrew Thomas, who's your left tackle? What does the depth on your line look like? Can you perform at the same level offensively that you would if Thomas is healthy and at his top level? And can you really afford to do that? I mean, I look at it this way, Brett, and I say the Giants just can't be in the business of getting rid of good players at the moment. And I think that's part of why they re-signed Slayton, even though he's not the level of Andrew Thomas. That's why it was curious to me that Bobby Okereke rumblings were happening. I still, at the moment, nothing has happened with him. But even at that point, when I reported that, I was pointing out, like, you just at this point, like, you can't really be in the business of, getting rid of good players. Like you need to utilize and unlock the best out of your good players. If you start getting rid of them, you're just not going to have a job much longer. But Brett, I still like your idea and your thought process of trying to create solutions, for how the Giants can kind of turn this over and continue building and compete, right? Like that's what you're getting at. Savage Steve says, I love having the extra third for ammo to move around if need be, referring to the extra third round pick, the compensatory pick the Giants acquired for losing Xavier McKinney in free agency to the Green Bay Packers last year. A third, not a fourth. Obviously, those projections always usually in the right ballpark, but all necessarily not known until the NFL makes it clear. So, yes, having an extra third round pick is helpful for the Giants. They do have some good looking ammunition in the draft, which of course happens automatically when you are picking at the very top of every round because you stink. But when you're in the position of needing to plug holes, needing to rebuild your roster, trying to get youth and cost control on it, these are the quality of picks you want. And absolutely, Steve, it can help you add another player or it can help you move around the board. Frankly, if you're not trading up for a QB, Steve, though, I would love to just use that pick on another player. Like right now, if I'm the Giants, if I'm Joe Shane, I'm not trying to use fewer picks. I'm trying to use as many picks as possible to take as many swings as I can at players who can help me both now and in the future. But like I said, the trade up for the quarterback is kind of the asterisk to that. Ken says maybe he had no desire to return, but Kevin Zeitler, another blown opportunity. Guy had an 87 PFF grade, never misses a game. 10 million would have done it as he signed for 9 million with the Titans. Yeah, don't quite follow that one. I'll try to dig into why exactly not. I saw a report that Zeitler has family in the Nashville area, but obviously, he's very familiar and his family is very familiar with the New York area too. So definitely at the moment, the Giants did at the moment, the Giants, based on Jeremy's report, the Giants did not get better at right guard. They are sticking and staying pat at right guard. So that's a very interesting one. But like I said, Van Roten, Neal, Kubis, that's what I view as the competition there, so to speak. GCN says, Pat, a D line who now has been with a D lineman who now has been with 4 teams, a DB with 1 leg, and some other guy. What about the bad O line? Free agent signings have not improved the team. Yeah, like I said, I like Golston. Some of the others have questions about, but yeah, well, let's talk through them throughout. What have I not talked about that you just addressed? Well, Adebo's leg, he had a broken femur. That's in your thigh. He's already running on grass. So, no concern there, at least that I've heard about him being ready for the season. Now, these players are all coming in to take physicals and officially sign, knock on wood. So you wait to see what happens there and what you hear coming out of that. I think corner is still a position that's not fixed or solved or addressed. Like Adebo is an important swing and a body that you're throwing at that secondary and at that outside corner position, but this in no way solves the corner position, right? You still don't know what you're getting out of Deonte Banks this year. Cordell Flott has struggled to stay healthy. Drew Phillips is a slot who needs to continue to grow. So you still need more bodies in that secondary. Orlovsky said some teams have Dart as the second QB. Giants, I like him. No drama, said Brett. Brett, so you may have posted this in the chat before I said that, but yes, that is true. And like I said, I talked to one person, not a general manager, but one person who said that they privately like Dart all around, just themselves. This is not like a team putting them on. This isn't a team putting them on the board as the number 1 quarterback. I'm just saying somebody who said that he's just their favorite quarterback prospect when you factor everything in. Tim says, hey, Pat, should the Giants sign Minshew over Rodgers and Wilson? I mean, you could make an argument they're saving themselves from themselves maybe by making a cheaper signing on a player like that. And like I mentioned, a Cooper Rush or a Jameis Winston or a Gardner Minshew, that type of thing. Yes, they're not spending $45 million on Aaron Rodgers. They're spending $10 million on Gardner Minshew or whatever, and pairing him with the rookie and just rolling with the rookie and trying to make that work. You could make that argument that puts them in a better spot, right? And it forces them to go the rookie and the developmental route. Obviously, though, that's complicated because, what is Brian Daboll going to get out of that level of quarterback? How many games are they going to actually win if they go that route? That's the problem with that. They may be forced into that, Tim, but in the short term, doesn't feel like the best thing for this organization and its ability to win games in 2025 and this regime, even if it feels like the right rebuild course, if that makes sense. Very interesting. I'll just be honest, with the chance that they miss out on these veterans, before he signed with the Cardinals, I was looking into Jacoby Brissett as a potential Giants option. In other words, this was a day ago, looking into what Brissett would mean if the Giants lost out on Wilson and Rodgers, because he was somebody that people were kind of mentioning to me, kind of whispering in my ear, keep an eye on. Chronicles says, when do the big time free agent ads arrive at Giants Drive? Gabe, I know that tomorrow, hopefully there will be some connection with some of the Giants signings. So expect to see more of that tomorrow. Now, sometimes that happens through Zoom. Sometimes that happens, remotely on Zoom. Sometimes it happens with the team from the facility. The Giants have started in the last year or two to do these types of things remotely and not in person. I don't totally agree. I don't agree at all, honestly, with when Brian Burns last year got traded for, they gave up a 2nd-round pick in that trade and he signed a gazillion dollar contract. For him to do his interview on Zoom just felt like, I don't know, downplaying it. It just wasn't as big. It didn't feel big. I don't think it's the right way to do it. I think you should make a big deal. I think you should bring people in person. I think it should be up on the stage. I think you should have the cameras and the bright lights. Like that's how I would do it. But I don't believe that's how we're doing it. But yes, it's going to, I would expect some of that to start tomorrow, Thursday on the 13th. Thanks. Good question there, though, Gabe. Let's see. Let's keep going, keep rolling. GCN says, Pat, Steve Young was on the Rich Eisen show. He would not say that Daboll was a bad coach, but he first said Daboll's offense was 20 years, then 10 years behind current NFL offenses. Well, I would love for you to link that clip in here, GCN, because I didn't see it, but I agree with that. Todd says, hypothetical, we kept Daniel Jones. He obviously wasn't the problem last year, and we could have drafted the rookie. Now we are desperate. Yep. Well, wasn't it really awkward that day there where it was like the Giants were waiting on Daniel Jones to pick a team, then to see what the Minnesota situation would look like, because now the Vikings still need a veteran. Like all of that was super interesting. You know, Cooper Rush actually would be a good fit there. Like if JJ McCarthy really is going to take over and be the guy, but you want a veteran who can play capably and be a good mentor, that's actually a good fit for Rush. Candyman says, thanks for keeping us informed. At least one guy tells the truth. You got it, Candy. Thank you. GCN says, big news. Dallas signed a free agent for the first time since 2015, a punter. Nick says, what's the word on Tyree Phillips? Was surprised he came back to the Giants last year. I was too. I was too. Well, he was coming off an injury. So that was what happened there. And as far as what has happened to him, let's see. At the moment, I think Tyree, I wanted to say he was still under contract, but let me double check that. Let's see here. No, Tyree Phillips is a free agent at the moment. So Tyree Phillips, as we know, he was the player who ended up helping them in a big way 2 years ago when Evan Neal got hurt and he plugged in at right tackle and played good football, ended up getting hurt at the end of the season 2 years ago. And then a long rehab, ended up back in New York this past season, currently a free agent. So currently a free agent. So I honestly, I had to look that up because I couldn't remember if he had signed a futures deal or where that had gone. So I needed to double check that. Let's see. Peterstown says we are going to finally see how bad of a coach Daboll is when we watch Daniel Jones win the job in Indy and have a nice year with that great O-line and running back. Glad you brought up Daniel Jones in Indianapolis. So I believe that even though the Colts genuinely want and hope that Anthony Richardson, their top, 4 pick from a couple years ago, they obviously want Anthony Richardson to turn it around, for the light to turn on, and for him to dominate and be the guy. That's the ideal scenario for Indianapolis. And so certainly a competition with Daniel Jones could draw that out of him. But let's not forget, like, this guy, Anthony Richardson, walked off the field and quit in the middle of a drive on his team. And I don't see how you get around that, how you bounce back from that, how you recover from that. I honestly have no idea. And I genuinely believe, because Shane Steichen is coaching for his job this year, I think that Daniel Jones is going to be the starter. I think Richardson is what he is right now, and he's going to work hard. He's going to try to win it, and the Colts are going to want that to happen. But Daniel's a good player. He's not what the Giants envisioned him to be at 6 overall, and he didn't become the franchise quarterback the Giants thought he was going to be here. But we've seen a lot of players leave New York and look a lot better than they did with the Giants uniform on. And frankly, I think Daniel Jones is going to be the next one to do so. And I think the Colts are going to give him a chance to play and that he's going to beat out Anthony Richardson because he's going to be a better player. Yes, A2. Tommy Cutlets for now, still the quarterback. Let's see. So Steve is one of those who says not getting Rodgers or Wilson, he thinks would be a blessing. Andrew says drafting a wide receiver in such a quarterback-heavy draft class last year was such a huge blunder. It doesn't matter if you have neighbors if Jameis Winston is throwing to him. Yeah, that's interesting, though, Andrew, because if it's hard, if you do end up finding the right quarterback and building the right line, then having neighbors obviously becomes everyone is jealous of you that you do if he continues to grow. Then again, to your point, if you don't have the line and the quarterback, what does it matter? I was surprised they didn't take a quarterback last year, especially with how aggressively they scouted them and how much time they spent even on the guys who they didn't end up taking. I think they definitely made that 2-year plan with Daniel Jones. And when they couldn't get Jaden Daniels and Drake May, they stuck to that. They did try very hard to trade up to number 3 for Drake May. So it's not like they weren't trying to take a quarterback. They just weren't going to take anyone, And, I wonder if that's instructive on how they act this year. Because last year, there were 3 guys who went in the first round after the Giants pick. And the Giants just said, there's 3 that we would take and there's 3 we wouldn't at this spot, right? That's essentially what they showed you. So this year, we talk about Cam Ward, Shador, and Jackson Dart. Would the Giants take any of the 3 at their number 3 overall pick? Is there only one they want and they want to trade up to 1? That'll be interesting. But yeah, so Andrew, to address your point there, team building wise, getting neighbors and having a guy who is an elite talent at wide receiver, that's a really good rebuild addition. And so this year, for example, if the Giants' number 3 pick is Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, that's another elite player at a position, you hope or you think, that's, going to help just make your roster full of A-listers or A- players and B+ at worst players at several key spots. That's eventually how you just start to build and build and build. But what does the timeline look like? It can't be, hey, yeah, we're adding these great players one by one. Just give us 7 years, right? Like that's just not how it works in the NFL. You don't finish in 3rd and 4th place 5 and 6 years, and then hey, year 7, it's going to turn, right? Like so, there's a give and take to it. But there is a thought process to to your point, Andrew. As much as getting that key player at number 3 and a non-quarterback at number 3 is exciting from a team building standpoint. That felt more likely. It feels more likely if you get a Matthew Stafford in that trade, for example, right? So then you get the quarterback and you get that player. Now, though, do you need the quarterback at that spot? Tariq says the Giants will be drafting high again in 2026. Book it and lipstick on a pig with a veteran quarterback won't change that. Facts. GCN, I see all your comments there. I really appreciate it. I'm going to skip some of them here because you're putting a lot into the queue and I want to make sure I get to everybody, but I will address plenty of your questions as I have already. So I appreciate that. But thanks for your understanding and thanks for all your support. I really appreciate you. We're an hour and 15 minutes in. Reminder, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, My Bookie Sportsbook, Sal Loretta for Men in Midland Park, New Jersey, luxury menswear and tailoring, and Estate 98 coffee. So My Bookie, just real quickly, if you're going to bet on My Bookie, it's the most props you're going to find anywhere. You're going to win bigger there than anywhere else. You're going to use the promo code PATSPICKS at My Bookie and get a 50% match on your first deposit all the way up to $2,000. And at Boom Chaga, use the Talkin Ball 25 code or the QR code on your screen, and you'll get 25% off your first order on the subscribe and save option for boomchaga.com. Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. Cell renewal, anti-inflammation, heart, gut, and kidney health. Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. Boomchaga.com, Talkin Ball 25. And Estate 98 coffee is estate98.com/Talkin Ball. Great, great, great offer there. We do often in these Talkin Ball lives, we do a Giants trivia question for a free Estate 98 giveaway. Not sure we're going to be dropping one in tonight, but stay tuned for the next one, and we will continue to give away that fantastic product that I know a lot of you have been able to win and have enjoyed once you've landed it. All right. John Moog says, are you sure? I heard that all Wilson wanted was a chance to compete for QB1. You're talking about last year, John. Well, here's the thing. Wilson, they were not able to guarantee Wilson the ability to start for their team. So it wasn't going to be a competition. So let me correct this. Drew Lock was signed here and was told he would have a chance to compete to be the starter. In training camp, Drew Lock did not unseat or even come close to a Daniel Jones. And the writing was on the wall, and he understood, and it was clear from the Giants' end that it was Daniel's job to lose, right? So Russell Wilson wasn't coming in to compete with Daniel Jones, to lose to Daniel Jones, to back up Daniel Jones to eventually start. The intention for him was to come to New York and start. When the Giants couldn't guarantee him that, he went to Pittsburgh. Now, Justin Fields ended up starting in Pittsburgh, but remember, Russell Wilson was out at the beginning of the season with a calf injury, and Justin Fields went 4-2 to start the year. But when Wilson got healthy, Tomlin went to him. And so that's what ended up happening. If the Giants could have guaranteed him playing time at the start of last season, he would have been a Giant. Brett says Rodgers better start running with the Bulls in Pamplona if he's staying in New York. That's a funny line, Brett. That's a funny line. Brett got a better line than any line I've dropped tonight. Like I said earlier, go check out. I still think it's an interesting interview with Darius Slayton. There's some comments he makes about what he wants to see the Giants do in my interview with him a couple of weeks ago, now that he's resigned. And then 2 days ago, Justin Simmons, Benny Fowler, and I had a great conversation. Justin Simmons, a free agent safety, looking to join a contender. Great guy, two-time Pro Bowler, 4-time second-team All-Pro, longtime Denver Bronco, played with the Atlanta Falcons last year. Really excited to see where he lands. Could be the Eagles, could be the Commanders. He was joking that he hates the Chiefs, but he's curious. But we're all curious if they'll call. So we'll see. Pat Wilson went 6-6 with the Steelers. They were totally dominated by the Eagles, Kansas City, and Ravens with him as quarterback at the end of the season. Yeah, I'm not. Believe me, GCN and others I see. I'm not telling you that Russell Wilson is going to come here and win a bunch of games if he signs with the Giants. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just talking about from a Giants interest standpoint when it comes to Rodgers and Wilson versus the rest of the crew. Let's see. Always Be Great says, if AR or his people reached out to the Giants during the combine to express interest and we reciprocated interest, what's the holdup? It seems like a layup if Rodgers reached out first. No? I think here's what I'll say always. I know people who think that in the end, and again, we're sitting here, it's 10:53 p.m. Eastern on March 12th, Wednesday, March 12th. So what I'm saying right now could be old news in 5 minutes. It could be old news in 10 minutes. But I know some people who think that in the end, Rodgers is going to choose what's the easiest fit for him right now, which is I get to continue my career. I get to continue living in my same house. I have a house here in Cedar Grove, New Jersey. And, I've bought it and I put work on it. I put work into it. I updated it. And why not? Why not stay with the Giants and stay in New York, stay in New Jersey? It's easier on his life. It's less complicated than 1 year in Pittsburgh. And then what, renting something in Pittsburgh, it's less, it's definitely not as good of a team as Minnesota if that were to come to pass. But there are some people I know who believe that in the end, them knowing Rodgers, they just feel like he's going to pick the Giants in New York because it's the easiest thing for his current life setup. And he gets to continue to play ball, and the Giants desperately need him. And from my vantage point, you're going to get more control of the Giants offense than any other offense if you're Aaron Rodgers, because Brian Daboll is not going to tell Aaron Rodgers he can't change the offense to his liking, right? He doesn't have that clout. So those are all reasons why there are some people who think he will choose the Giants. I agree with you always. And there are others who feel like Aaron has been creating the market, he's been helping to create and develop his market for himself. And that included reaching out to teams to gauge if they would potentially be interested, including the Giants. That includes trying to make sure he has some sort of leverage between teams. It includes trying to make sure that he turns over every stone to figure out what the best possible team is out there that he could join. And it also includes, he's on the record saying that he thinks he wants to play again this year. And obviously reaching out to all these teams makes it seem like he does. But knowing Aaron Rodgers and how unpredictable he is and how much thought he puts into these things, how much time he takes, how he deliberates. We saw the pictures from the Daily Mail of him on the beach standing there looking like he's deliberating all of his options. You think about all that and you say, if this guy retired, would that really surprise me? So you're wondering what the holdup is. I think the holdup is he created his own market. He gauged his own market. Now he's weighing his own market and he goes at his own speed. This is what happened during his 2 years with the Giants, including when he was traded from Green Bay. Everything takes a little bit longer. He remains in the news cycle. He remains in the spotlight. Everything ends up about Aaron. And, you heard Aaron Glenn say, this is no longer about Aaron Rodgers. This is about the New York Jets. And so it'll be interesting to see if the Giants say, well, now this is no longer about the Giants. This is about Aaron Rodgers. I agree with kind of what you're getting at always, which is, there's a part of you that feels like, man, the longer this drags on, the longer it feels like he's not going to choose the Giants, right? That is how it feels given how long they've been talking. But that's not necessarily the case with Rodgers either, because he doesn't subscribe to other people's timelines or processes. He's doing his own thing, But, for me to sit here and tell you which way it's going to go, we don't know yet. We don't know yet. We're all waiting. And that's the honest truth. Let's see. Tariq points out the Eagles, Chiefs, and Ravens dominated a lot of teams. Hirsch, what's going on? Let's see. A2 says, are we better, Pat, or are we just slightly different than last year? I would go more with the slightly different so far, A2. I think that a healthy Adebo and a healthy Holland improve your secondary. They do. They definitely do. Like, it's not, I don't know how much, but they definitely do. Like, Holland is a clear upgrade on Pinnock, and Adebo is a clear upgrade as a number one over Banks as your number one last year. And Banks as your number two. Hopefully, if he is your number two, I do think they need to continue taking swings at corners, like I said. Hopefully, in that sense, he returns to being more of the above replacement level player that you thought you drafted. Hirsch says, did the Giants trade up to 1 to draft Cam Ward or stay at 3 and pick Travis Hunter? I think people increasingly seem to think that the Titans could end up drafting there. One thing that could happen is if the Titans swoop in here and suddenly end up signing one of these veterans, one of the bigger names left after kind of putting all this money into their offensive line, then maybe they do an about face and they make that trade out and someone like the Giants goes up and gets the quarterback. Right now, though, the Titans' early decisions and moves seem to point to a team that is considering drafting a quarterback number 1 overall. But like I said, if they were to suddenly sign Rodgers or suddenly sign Russell Wilson or get Kirk Cousins out of nowhere or something like that, then we would all turn our heads and say, whoa. But right now they're behaving more like a team that would draft number one, which surprises me because they were talking most of the early part of the offseason like a team that intended to trade out. Maybe they were just trying to lay the groundwork for conversations. Tariq says re-signing Darius Slayton is a non-bean counter move. Duncan Hennessy says Amani Toomer's ESPN comments hours before tampering was immature. Even if true, why would you try to remind agents and free agents don't pick up the phone? Also, he was obviously wrong. He just hates Joe Schoen. Duncan, I would ask you to please listen to my interview with Amani from around the Super Bowl. I think he's very thoughtful. I just think he's more honest and direct than a lot of people this close to the team or who have worn the Giants jersey are about the current situation. I think that he was responding to questions he was asked and just being brutally honest. And I don't think he's wrong. Like, I don't think, Duncan, that listen, here's the thing. We want people in this space, athletes, coaches, executives, everyone to be honest. And, I respect that honesty. Now, if you don't want a former Giant to be that critical of the Giants, then maybe that's something you don't want to hear. But whether it's effusive praise for something or harsh criticism, like I want the honesty. I don't want water carrying for either side. I don't want, someone telling me something I know not to be true. Like some of the things I've heard out there about like reasons, like what you're selling to these free agents of what's good and bad. Like, I'm like, do people watch the Giants? Like, talking about different qualities of these players, like positives and negatives. It's like they have it all upside down. Anyway, Duncan, I respect that comment by you. It did seem like inconvenient timing for the Giants for sure. It's kind of like, hey, could you have said this another time? But he's a personality. He's a guest. He's asked a question. He answers it. And like I said, I did an interview with Amani on the Talkin Ball podcast around the Super Bowl, and he said a lot of similar type stuff, but it was very contextualized. It wasn't like hating anybody, that kind of thing. He actually said, I like Joe Schoen and I like Brian Daboll, but, the fact of the matter is the word is out around the league. And I've been telling you guys this on this, like, and, I know Joe Banner is not a name that Giants fans, love, being a longtime Eagles president and that kind of thing. So plenty of you might just say, oh, well, consider the source, but he tweeted something a few days ago that was true. He said, the Giants have been struggling with improving their team. I have been saying this for 2 years. The front office has made a tremendous number of mistakes. And here's the thing I was mentioning. The GM's way of negotiating has alienated a lot of players, which goes way beyond Barkley and many agents. That is 100% true, that tweet. 100% true. So for Amani Toomer to say it, yeah, it's probably surprising to you that you hear from him, and you might not like the timing of it, but those things are facts. Yeah, I thought Slayton wanted to be on a contender too. That surprises me. Tariq says dark clouds over, Giants won't leave until Joe Schoen is gone. Cheerleaders are paid, don't work for free. Let's see. Brett says Slayton is loyal. Good job not getting rid of all the heart, Shane. Yeah, I think that's what that comes down to, really. GCN says he doesn't like the O-line yet, so they need a better line, or they won't get a better offense. Chronicles points out that Josh Palmer got the same deal and has less consistent production. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, is that like players that the Giants were looking at replacements for wide receiver 2 were getting the same kind of money that a guy that they knew had consistent production and was valuable to their locker room was getting. And if he had better, like you said, if Slayton was more consistent and was already in your building, and now he's going to, this type of level, like you have to get it done, right? But no, Gabe, I don't view that as he would have gotten more money from another team. You wouldn't leave money on the table and the ability to go to a contender to stay here. That wouldn't be the case. Mac Jones signs with the Niners per Adam Schefter. Well, that's one quarterback I do not expect Kyle Shanahan to rehabilitate. Let's see. Oh, Joey B checking in on the super chats. What's up, Joey B? Joey B says, "What's up, Pat from Tulum, Mexico? What's up? Who are we getting? A-Rod or Russ or somebody else? Need O-line help. Who's on the radar? Sorry, just joined on vacation, but can't miss Talkin Ball live." Look at Joey B sitting there on the beach with the umbrella in his iced tea, checking into Talkin Ball live on his cell phone on that hotel Wi-Fi. Man, I appreciate you. Love it. So, Joey B, to answer your question, I have personally felt like Russell Wilson was going to be the guy all along because I always thought that the Giants' biggest swings, right, Stafford, Rodgers, that they were going to be, it's going to be a too hard of a sell on guys like that, especially on Stafford, even though it was a real thing until it wasn't. I'm not saying Rodgers would make them a good team, but at least has like the pedigree for like the Jets did, like to dream that it could look a certain way, even if it's not going to, I guess. But Wilson always felt like the kind of consolation prize, big name who isn't a middle of the road starter that doesn't get the fan base buzzing at all. Like, I don't know if Wilson would be good with the Giants. In fact, he might not be good at all with the Giants, especially with like he had a really good play caller with Arthur Smith. And then even still after a good start, once he got in there, I think they won 4 straight at one point, but then he lost, what was it? 5 in a row, his last 5 games or something like that. And the offense really couldn't move the ball. So, I think, I'm not saying that it would be a home run, but I just felt like to go from Russell Wilson to either a Gardner Minshew or a Cooper Rush or a Jameis type thing, you're definitely, I think, in the minds of selling to the fans that you have a good team on the field in week 1, no matter what. That I think, if you can't sell to the fan base that the team you're putting on the field in week 1 has a chance to win the game, then it's going to be a long off season and it's a way to set yourself up to fail. Now, landing Russell Wilson doesn't mean that team's going to be great in week 1. But it does, I think, in their minds, probably they hope accomplish 2 things: get a guy who could win you that week 1 opener and create some buzz in the fan base, and have a guy who can help mentor and lead along a young player. Now, one interesting thing, Joe, so to answer your question, as you and I sit here right now at 11:08 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, March 12th, I think and have thought that Russell Wilson was the most likely result. But like I said, I have people telling me that some people who just think Rodgers in the end is going to pick the easy choice, take the money, stay in the house that he just bought a couple years ago and renovated or upgraded and updated, and ride it out however it goes with the Giants. So there's people telling you both things right now. And the Giants and Steelers are waiting to hear from Aaron Rodgers. So it's literally in a holding pattern. I wish I could tell you more. That's the most I can tell you. But like I said earlier, Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, Joe, like these are both guys that want to go somewhere and play. And so the interesting thing about both Rodgers and Wilson is if you get either of those guys, is either of them signing up to play for you if you're going to start them for sure in week 1, but you can't guarantee them anything past that, right? Because you drafted a quarterback number 3, or you have a guy that you're trying to get on the field soon, right? So that's an interesting part of this. That's a potential why, again, going back to the Stafford move. If they had gotten Stafford, wouldn't they have probably used their number 3 pick on a player like a Travis Hunter? I don't know. Maybe they still would have used it on a quarterback, but um, you know, feels like there's probably some difficulty in like, hey, Aaron or Russ, we want you, but they want to play. They're not coming here to hold some rookie's hand while he replaces them in week 3. Joey B checking in from vacay. Man, I need to switch spots with you. I need a beach stat. Chronicle says, here's the thing, Pat. If Joe Shane ruined relationships with agents, why do X and Holland have the same agent and Joe Shane got a deal done? Well, listen, there are a lot of agents, there are a lot of players, and there are a lot of executives. Sometimes you burn bridges for good. Sometimes you don't burn the bridge. Sometimes you partially burn the bridge, it gets mended. But Chronicles, Gabe, first of all, the Giants are an NFL team that has money and a checkbook. So there are going to be plenty of agents, no matter who their clients are or how things have gone in the past. They still know a dollar when they see one. And so they're still going to do business. Their job is to do business for their client. Their job is to try to get top dollar and find good fits for their clients. So those conversations are going to happen. But there are plenty of people who have been rubbed the wrong way by the way the Giants have done business in recent years. There just are. And also the McKinney one, to answer that specific question, Chronicles, I don't think, first of all, if you remember, there was basically no mention of McKinney, virtually no mention of McKinney on Hard Knocks. And that whole situation was kept very quiet. That situation went a bit differently than a lot of the others. Like McKinney ended up just the Giants offering him an okay to good contract in their minds, and the Packers offering him a great one. Right. So, it wasn't like them, telling, um, Julian Love what they thought of him as a player, or, um, you know, Saquon Barkley feeling like that the details of his contract negotiations were being leaked by members from the other side of the table, or Nick Gates and his whole situation. And, just a few players I'm mentioning there, but several others. There's many others. Nick McLeod and what Shane said to him, what Shane said to his representation this past year before eventually cutting him. So a lot of different situations there, but obviously doesn't apply necessarily to all of them either, Gabe. Thank you for paying in again. I really appreciate that. All right, let's see. We got Simeon says Shane screwed up period. He has to win a Super Bowl to live down not building a line for Saquon. Tony says, isn't a Carr or Cousins a better option? If you're talking about Derek Carr, I don't think Derek Carr is very, very good. I would not want him to be my quarterback. I wouldn't mind Cousins. Aaron says someone will have probably have a better season than Thibodeau, and he hasn't missed a game in a few years. Who are you talking about there, Aaron? Golston? Intel says, how low can we go, Pat? We are waiting for 41-year-old quarterback. Let's see. NYCE says, F it, sign Trey Lance. Yeah, no, but I get the joke. Thank you. Tommy, health and wealth to all. Appreciate you. Aaron says the Giants went over 2 games in a row without a sack at one point last season. Let's see. Madden's Pass says, did you see they used a void year in Slayton's contract? Did they? I don't think so. I think he just has a third year that I think it's just his third year includes no guaranteed money. Like it has a $2.5 million roster bonus due at the start of his third year, 2027 of the deal. And his 22 million guaranteed is spread out in the first 2 years, 2025 and 2026, when he's due to make max 26 million in those 2 years. I think that's what it is. I don't think it's a void year. Not the contract terms that I saw anyway. McKnight says, I think looking like we're heading in the right direction is the most important thing. Yeah, no, for sure. You want to do that. I think what they still have to do in order to do that, Mr. Knight, is to hit on some key draft picks at key positions. If you think about from a team building process, like I mentioned, Malik Neighbor is a great person to have in your building, even though you didn't go QB, right? So, guys like Thibodeau and Banks right now, and obviously Evan Neal, like even a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, like these draft picks, Jalen Hyatt, these draft picks are not profiling as long-term answers at key positions, right? So even a Cordell Flott. So you need to draft players at corner, defensive tackle, offensive line, and you need to hit on some of those players. Like last year, we feel good about Neighbors. We feel good about Tyrone Tracy as a complement somehow in the offense. Some people like Drew Phillips, Nubin and Theo Johnson. I think we need to see more, but have some potential. But you need to hit on some of these draft picks, I think, in large part, Mr. Knight, in order to go in the direction that you're talking about. Tariq says too many holes on the defense for 1 or 2 star players to overcome. Possibly. At least they're trying, right? Bill says, what's the state of the interior offensive line? Right now, it's exactly the same, it appears, which is a bit concerning. It's Runyon left, John Michael Schmidt center, Greg Van Roten right guard, and then, does Jay Kubis compete with both the right guard, Van Roten, and Schmitz at center? Does he start at right guard instead of Van Roten? Where does that go? If Rodgers goes to Pitt and Giants sign Wilson, will the Giants be aggressive in trading up to number 1? I think it depends on the Titans and what they're doing with the pick. Simeon says Becton is still free and not a sniff from Shane. Well, if you're honest about the fact that you might not get the same thing out of that player that Jeff Stoutland did, and you don't want to overpay in free agency for a player you might not be able to coach up the same way, I could see that thought process. But yeah, don't think we were all hoping for them to run back a right guard that the GM basically said was gone. Aaron wants to know if the Browns were to waive Deshaun Watson, would the Giants sign him? No, they would not. John Mara would never do that. After the Josh Brown scandal and understanding, everything connected to that, I believe Mara was asked about whether he would consider he was asked something about either acquiring Watson, something related to Watson when Watson was available or suspended and when he was maybe on the trade market. And I believe I have to double check this. I thought John was on the record saying he would never be interested in that, but no, they would not do that. Andre says, how is the draft depth at guard? Oh, interesting question. So let me see if I can find. There was an offensive lineman in the draft. that was mentioned to me. Let me see if I can find his name for you. I think I might have mentioned this in a Talkin Ball live before, but just trying to get to my big board here. And let's see. Jackson Slater from Sacramento State. Jackson Slater from Sacramento State, a guard that one of my O-line expert friends from Disruptive Sports, Big Al from Disruptive Sports, a guy who knows his O-line, coached Braxton Jones, who now plays for the Bears back in college and represents a bunch of players, but also has been in the training and coaching space and just knows O-linemen. I quoted him last year in my series on the Giants O-line, and he told me that this guy, Jackson Slater from Sacramento State, is nasty and is exactly what you're looking for if you're an NFL team trying to upgrade on the interior. So that's a name I would keep an eye on, Jackson Slater. Aaron wants to know, if the Titans go Ward and the Browns go Abdul Carter, do the Giants take Hunter and try to trade into the late first for Sanders? We're thinking he's going to drop like Geno Smith in the draft. I don't know, Aaron. I don't know right now. Jackson Dart's been rising up the boards too. To be honest, I think the Giants have been profiling like a team that's lukewarm on the top of the draft quarterbacks and was intending to use that pick on a player while getting a really good quarterback in free agency or trade. That's how they've been acting. But we'll see. I've said this many times, but they were all over scouting Shador this year. I mean, all over him. So it always felt to me like that was the guy, but obviously Cam Ward has risen up boards and acquitted himself well. Very murky, very murky. A lot of misdirection in that space. I just think that the Stafford plan looked like get Stafford, draft a player like Hunter at 3. I wish there were an offensive lineman worthy of that pick. Aaron says that Stanford has rigorous academic standards, so Paulson has some intellect about him. Yeah, Bobby O also played at Stanford. They were teammates there. And you definitely need intelligent players in the NFL. Man, the more I learn about the calls that come into them, that they need to memorize, the checks that they need to have and see and be able to kind of adjust to on the fly. Wild. Not many positions on a football field that you can play and not be like highly intelligent to play. Brett says, Pat, is there something about a broken femur with Paulson Adebo that I'm missing? How is that not serious? No, I mean, he's going to have to pass a physical, and it's not that it's not serious, but there's just been no articulation that he's not going to be able to play football, but we're going to wait and see. I mean, hopefully we talk to Adebo as soon as tomorrow, the 13th on Thursday, and find out more. So we'll see about that. Let's see. Tommy says, Ward makes a lot of mistakes. In the NFL, it'll be hard to come back in games. He needs a lot of development. Still, Dart and Sanders have more IQ and touch. Simeon says, am I wrong for hoping the Giants can only sign Jameis Winston and miss out on Ward and Sanders just so this regime gets fired? Oh, so you're hoping that that's what happens. Simeon, there's nothing. I mean, you don't want your team to lose, obviously, but if you don't have faith in their direction and their ability to competently build a team and a roster and a winner, then no, of course. I mean, to me, loyalty as a fan is trying to support the team in the way that you think is going to help them turn around the best. So that's why booing is not necessarily being negative, because if a team is trotting out a horrible product week after week and you boo, you're not a bad fan because you're booing. You're a good fan because you're booing, because you're telling them this is not good enough. This is unacceptable. So No, I mean, I hear what you're saying. And like I said, Simeon, at the top of the show, I was saying that a couple of my Giants fan friends just said tonight on their own. I didn't even ask them, but they were just saying, why are we trying to get Rodgers? I don't want him. I don't want him. I don't even want to watch the team if we have Rodgers. And the other fan said they're probably better off just having another rough year and having a higher pick in 2026 as well. And so, you know, that's kind of a similar mindset. Tommy says Sanders and Sons coming to turn the franchise around. RJ says, Pat, what's your relationship like with the Giants organization? I feel like sometimes fans don't like you because you're harsh on the team. My relationship with the organization is probably what you would imagine it is. They do not love in general. There are a lot of people there who do not love that I speak truths that I believe or know that they either disagree with or don't want out there, depending on whether they would debate certain things are true. And then there's other things that they know are true that they just don't want said out loud and that an employee of the team wouldn't say, or a team friendly reporter wouldn't say, but I do. So obviously there's friction there to that, but this is part of the business. I mean, it's not personal. Like, I don't work for the Giants. If they paid my salary, there'd be plenty of things that I say to you guys that I wouldn't be allowed to or able to. But I don't work for them. And my job is to try to cover and analyze and report the truth and the truth with the Giants and in the NFL as I see it. And listen, I talk a lot about the Giants because I'm around them every day, but like, you know, I can sit here right now and tell you that my Super Bowl pick from last year, the Houston Texans, trading Laramie Tunsil to the Commanders, what are we doing? I mean, I get if you decided, okay, this guy wants an extension or another extension, we feel like he didn't have a good year. We can get a boatload of draft picks for him to continue to kind of restock our draft picks. I can see the rationale that gets you to that point, but man, like if you're CJ Stroud, aren't you looking at like what the heck are we doing? If like Nick Casario, that's a very interesting and at this moment very questionable move, right? So very curious to see how that works out. But like I would criticize that move and kind of raise my eyebrow at that and say, what's going on here? Washington, even though they're a very promising team, up and coming, so far they've made major acquisitions of Marshawn Lattimore in a trade last year, which at least in the back half of last year didn't look great. And then Deebo Samuel, a player that I love, but last year was out of shape. Some people think has lost a step. Then Tunsil, a player who you're giving up a ton of assets for, and you are, what kind of player are you getting, right? He's not in the first few years of his career anymore. So how high is he going to play at that level, the high level that we know him to play at for the next 3-4 years? We don't know. But Washington's going to be good, and you got to capitalize on the rookie contract. And I see what they're doing, especially going for the new stadium, and it's the turnaround with the new ownership and all of that. So it's easy to jump on board. But I could sit here and poke holes in that and say, man, it's nice that they're loading up, but are they going a little too fast here, right? Like, are they adding, kind of putting all their eggs in one basket on some players where they don't feel like targeted value acquisitions? They feel like win now, hoping we get the best version of all these players acquisitions, right? So, you asked me about the Giants. I'd be just as honest about any of these teams, and I am just as honest about any of these teams. One thing I thought was funny, interesting troll job by the Eagles today, signing A.J. Dillon, because the Green Bay Packers are the team that tried to get the tush push banned. And so now the Eagles have signed A.J. Dillon, and they're going to run the tush push with Jalen Hurts, A.J. Dillon, and Saquon Barkley all pushing. Those three guys probably, three of the top squatters in the NFL when it comes to obviously like their body types and positions. And they're going to run the tush push, and it's going to be a huge Packers troll job. I think that's pretty funny. Let's see. What else would I question? Oh, Seattle Seahawks. You know, what's the plan there? New offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak. You get Sam Darnold, but this isn't Sam Darnold with Justin Jefferson, right? And so DK Metcalf's gone, Tyler Lockett's gone. The offensive line needs drastic improvement. You know, there are plenty of teams out there that you could sit here and question. I mean, the Cowboys are getting second guessed at every turn because of, their continued, I don't know, stubbornness. So there's plenty of organizations out there that don't seem like they're optimizing their offseason so far. And, if I were covering any of those teams as closely and consistently as I cover the Giants, RJ, uh, I would have the same approach, So, I think to bring it back to the Giants, there are plenty of people in the Giants organization as well who appreciate me for being dishonest and don't feel like I shouldn't be saying those things. They actually like that someone's saying them, even though they are not allowed to say them, if that makes sense. And, um, I think the people in the business who really get it and understand it and I respect the most are the people who they understand it's a business and we all have a part to play and a job to do. They don't take it personally. And I would sum it up this way. There are some players, there are some quarterbacks, if they throw 3 interceptions and you say they played poorly, they'll get upset at you for saying that. There are other quarterbacks who will throw 3 interceptions, and when you say they played poorly, you can't even get the sentence down on a paper or get the sentence out of your mouth before they say it themselves at the podium. Or they come up to you the next day and they say, "I saw what you said. You're absolutely right. I played crap." Those are the people who get it. And there are people in every organization, including the Giants organization, who are like that. In other words, they're accountable. They're accountable to their successes, to their failures. Like today, I talked about, especially like the one player I was really excited to talk to you guys about was Chauncey Golston. I think that's a really good addition. I like it a lot. Um, you know, and so a lot of the others, it's wait and see. They did throw some money around, but it is definitely wait and see on a standpoint of like how good the team is. On paper, the secondary is unquestionably better on paper. How will it look once they hit the field? Will the offensive line be good enough? Right. A lot of lingering questions still. Of course, led by the quarterback. Noel says, "Hey, Pat, always good chatting with you, bro. You too, Noel. The last 2 years, the Giants have made trades at the start of free agency by trading draft picks to obtain a starter. Do you see them doing the same thing?" Haven't heard anything pop up yet. I do think if they're going to make a big trade this year, it's a quarterback. Like you're referencing, obviously, Brian Burns last year. But I think for this year, it would be a quarterback at the moment. We'll see, though. Depending on other players that teams are trying to offload and deeper into the offseason when prices come down a little bit, you never know. I would say this, Noel. Anything's on the table for the Giants right now, which you can tell by the fact that they entered the NFL Combine guns blazing going after Matthew Stafford. You know what I mean? Like they're pulling out all the stops. But I said this earlier, I'll say it again. If I'm Joe Shane, yes, I want to make a move that's going to improve my team and I need to win games. But man, oh man, you do not want, especially like when you have that extra third round pick round now as the comp, you want as many chances to pick good players as you can. The frustrating thing with the Giants right now is they have become a team that is not building through the draft and supplementing through free agency. They are now the opposite. The thing that Joe Shane was trying to fix about the Giants, he didn't want to be. They are now a build through free agency and trades and supplement with the draft. That's what they are. And it's dangerous territory. Vince G says the quarterback situation is a disaster. You said it. Brett said, "What's your percentage on us drafting Arch Manning next year? Above 15%. Is he coming out into the draft next year? Definitely, Brett. I don't even know if that's true. GCN says the Giants and the fans don't like Pat because they can't handle the truth. Pat just reports the facts like Joe Friday. I wouldn't say fans don't like me. There are a lot of fans that don't like me, but you are all fans here and you appreciate what I'm bringing and what I'm saying. And frankly, a lot of what I share ends up bleeding into the general consciousness of how people speak about the Giants truthfully. And, you know, I'm happy to provide that. Rookie Move says, thanks for all your insights. With everything going on, including quarterback need, I feel the team has improved. Do you agree? I am in wait and see mode. The defense has improved on paper. I like the Golston signing. If Adebo is healthy, he's a better corner than they had on the roster last year. And if Holland is healthy, he's a better safety than they had on the roster last year. So those are improvements, no doubt about it. But the offensive line and the offense in general just hasn't received any kind of attention. So, it's hard, rookie. It's hard for me to say that the team's better and the Giants have improved right now. It's hard to say that. Not 30 visits, not onto that yet. Trying to get through quarterback gate here. No, let me see. Talked about Rodgers. Jay says Aaron Rodgers and Wilson are like the plague. They're just going through the motions. Sign Winston and draft Sanders without trading any picks. Famous Jameson Sanders will electrify this dull team. That would be interesting. I will agree. That will be interesting. Let's see. Mike says he would keep all 5 picks within the first 105 and build it up. Vince says if Daniel Jones does well in Indianapolis, it's going to be a bad sign for Daboll. He will do better in Indy. John says biggest mistake was not taking Michael Penix Jr. They got cute and thought they could get him late first or second round. Rookie Move says, Pat, what are you sipping on? This is a Cabernet. It's actually a Jersey-based one. Kind of bought it last minute unexpectedly at the table the other day at a restaurant, Unionville or Uniondale, something like that. Cabernet. So shout out. Cheers. Appreciate you. Let's see. Stanley says, hey, Pat, being a journalist, do the ladies flock to you and other reporters, or do they flock to the athletes? Yeah, no, this is why the players want us out of the locker room because, it's just like when I'm around, it's just, players don't get any attention. Cedar Grove, RJ, Cedar Grove. Simeon says he's not going to intimidate Coach Tomlin the way he would Daboll. Rodgers is a giant. Well, one second. Oh, just landed 2 big guests for the Talkin Ball podcast next week. Oh boy. Wow. I can't even say this one out loud to you because if it doesn't happen, I don't want to jinx it. So Simeon, your point was, sorry, man. I just got excited. Just got a text that we just landed a special guest for next Tuesday. Whoo! Pumped. All right. So you think he'll be a giant because he could intimidate Daboll, not Tomlin? Yeah, I think that's he would have probably more say-so and control of the offense in New York, right? But Simeon, remember, this was pointed out to me. Like I said, Tomlin and Rodgers, really? And one person in the league said to me, they said, "You're forgetting Tomlin coached Ben Roethlisberger for all that time." Like Roethlisberger's not exactly known for being the easiest guy to be around and coach as a player. Like, believe me. So, if he could handle Roethlisberger, he could handle Rodgers. But I do think that what you said about why he might choose the Giants, I do think is a relevant point. At what point will not drafting a quarterback, keeping Jones, and putting all your chips on Azudu backing up Thomas again finally makes sense? Week 6 when they are fired. That's a good point, Brett. And don't forget, Gabe's Chronicles favorite thing. On top of all of that, letting Saquon go to the Eagles and win a Super Bowl. All right. Pat, would you take Abdul Carter at pick 3 and trade Kayvon for extra picks since we can't pay all 3 big money? Yeah. I'm not sure what you're getting for Kayvon right now. Like, what I mean is I don't know what you would be getting in a trade like that. But yeah, I would do something like that. Or just, put Kayvon on the option for the following year and draft Carter and have like a rotation this year. And then, if you're trading Kayvon at some point there and getting something for him, GCN wants Giants to draft Will Howard in the 2nd and Jalen Milroe in the 7th. Tommy says it's clear all these other teams are way ahead of the curve of the Giants roster and coaching, and the Giants have lost their integrity, keeping their identity intact, dominating the trenches. Simeon says Amani will not shake the pom-poms. That's right. Let's see. Yeah, he's just looking at their record. Yep. Evan says Neighbors probably wanted Slayton back. He definitely wanted Slayton back. He leans on Slayton heavily. Tommy says Giants need to make the defensive unit its identity, make it dominant, and then work on the offensive side because defensively we are just a couple players away. Tommy, I don't know if they're just a couple players away, but I'm glad you brought that up because in rounding out our conversation about what the Giants have done so far, I think we can all agree that if they had spent the assets and money on Stafford that they were going to, they probably wouldn't have been able to throw as much money into the defense even as they have already, right? So clearly their plan right now is a pivot from where they were at 2 weeks ago at the combine when Stafford was an option. They went from targeted additions on defense, trying to get Stafford, those types of things, to, okay, we don't let land Stafford. We're still pursuing these top quarterbacks that we feel are still in the market. But because John Mara said, I'm tired of watching this defense, and because it needed to get better and they had so many holes in it, they now have the money to then attack it in a meaningful way on the defensive side. I actually think Golston is a player that kind of becomes like a bonus signing with some extra money and funds and an ability to spend on that. But I do think it reflects a shift. Like when Joe Shane said, hey, yeah, me and John Mara and I met and we talked about different plans and scenarios depending on what happens with these quarterbacks and these players and signings and the draft. I think definitely one of the doors that was opened after the Stafford pursuit fell through was, yeah, we're going to keep trying to prove the offense too, but we're probably going to have to really try to build up a defensive identity and try to win games that way. Like I even look at how they're constructed right now, and I see a team that's probably going to have to run the ball a lot, try to control the clock on offense, matriculate drives, steadily downfield again, not be explosive, and then try to rely on a dominant defense. Do they have a dominant defense? No. Will they have a dominant defense with their additions? They're going to try to. We will see. But, it feels like a pivot to a defensive-led team right now. I agree with that. Duncan looks like it's GVR right now in the mix. But like I said, I think they need to draft O lineman again too. So I would keep looking on that side. Right. You can't just win with defense, though. How much detail went into building his house is the main question, Rodgers, Brett said. Well, he bought an expensive house and then updated it. So, put work into it. So enough to the point where it's his, but he has properties in other places too. I believe I've heard it. I know he has a house in Malibu, and it's been reported he has a house in Nashville as well, I believe. All right, let's see. Chronicles is still talking about the Shane thing. What, Gabe, you don't have to believe me if you don't want. I mean, you know, arguing with me about whether Shane's nice to players and agents. Apparently, McKinney spoke well of the Giants to Javon Holland before he signed with us. Well, Xavier's taking the high road. We know he's in a good place. And like I said, Chronicles, McKinney's situation was different from the others. It wasn't the same type of contentiousness as some of the others, even though obviously he felt like he was worth more than they were offering. Yes, the Giants kept Darius Slayton 3 years, $36 million, $22 million guaranteed. Evan says, I think it was the ATV accident that got Shane to not re-sign McKinney, which was a mistake. Signing Holland kind of made up for it, but have to see how he does in this defense. I wouldn't say it makes up for it. It definitely indicates that they recognize there's more value to the safety position than they believed. Let's see. Brett says, did anyone ever figure out how Bobby Johnson turned it around after I and everyone else wanted him fired? My guess is a toxic environment. I still miss Wink. Well, I just think, Brett, like there's more. Here's the bottom line. The general manager and the coach here, and this goes for a lot of programs that aren't working well. The general manager and the coach and ownership have made a lot of major mistakes at high levels in running this team. You have seen different people. Bobby Johnson's one, Wink's another, et cetera. Other people this year, it's Jerome Henderson and Mike Trier. You see other people get blamed and scapegoated. You heard Andre Patterson, the defensive line coach, blame bad run defense on the secondary's tackling this past December. One of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard somebody say. But this is the finger pointing game. And so that's the case. It doesn't mean a guy's a bad coach or a bad leader or person when they get fired. Sometimes it does. Just like sometimes it means a player's not good enough when they get cut. But sometimes it means they didn't have the right friends. GCN wants the Giants to buy an AI software GM and let AI pick all the players. Jacoby Brissett signed in Arizona, or else he would have been a good option. Jezer, yo, what's going on? How you doing? KJ says Giants are chasing relevance with Rodgers. Let's see. Joey B says, why don't we go get Milton from the Patriots? Interesting one there. Sounds like he's available or potentially available, or at least people think he's going to be available. And so that's one to keep an eye on. I'm not sure he would be the Giants' move or preference, though. So I haven't, in other words, yes, I've heard he's available or potentially available, but I cannot sit here and tell you I know that the Giants are interested in acquiring him. I don't know that. Let's see. Siri on my phone talking to me, thinking I'm talking to it. Creepy iPhone. All right, let's see. All right. We've gone 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'm a little gassed here. Not gonna lie, a little gassed. But this has been an awesome conversation here on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. Reminder brought to you by MyBookie. If you want to win big, you want to go to MyBookie, especially for March Madness coming up here. Use the Pat's Picks promo code and get a 50% match on your first deposit all the way up to $2,000. So right now, that means you would get $1,000 on your $2,000 first deposit. You would get $500 on your $1,000 first deposit at mybookie.ag. Use the promo code PatsPicks. More player props than you will find anywhere else. You can create your own props. There's a lot of NFL draft and NFL season futures already up there. You can bet on who's going to be the number one pick. You can bet on who's going to be Mr. Irrelevant. There's a lot of fun stuff on there, a lot of fun games to play. They have a casino over there. But yeah, get in on the action now while you can with this special deal through Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard here. Pat's Picks, 50% match. Go to my bookie and start winning big. I hit almost 55% of my bets against the spread betting every game all season in the NFL. If you tailed me, you made money, and you already know. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally feel a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. Use that code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, and you'll get 25% off your first order on the subscribe and save option. Right now, that means a month's supply cost you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Right here over my shoulder, that's what you're getting. It's a great product. We got 14 liquid packets in here. Anti-inflammation, heart, gut, and kidney health, cell renewal. No taste, right? You can pour it in any of your drinks. You could take it straight, taste it straight. No taste to it. You could ask Kayvon and Bobby. They tried it out at the Super Bowl Radio Row. And, of course, brought to you by Salaretta for Men in Midland Park, New Jersey, luxury menswear and tailoring. You want to go to Salaretta's now. Tell them Pat sent you for the best clothing and menswear in New Jersey, in the New York area, in the tri-state area. Salaretta for Men, salaretta.com. Go there in Midland Park and Bergen County. Tell them I sent you from Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. And, of course, Estate 98 Coffee, estate98.com/Talkin Ball for a special 80% off discount on that all-natural specialty coffee concentrate. 10 seconds makes a delicious cup of hot or iced coffee, as well as an espresso martini mixer. It's great as an espresso martini mixer. I know there are some of you out there drinking espresso martinis. As my Cabernet is about to tip over and be finished, Stanley wraps us up with, hey, Pat, would it be a good move for the Giants to sign Cooper Kupp? I do think that Wan'Dale is more of a gadget weapon than a true starting slot. I would rather see Wan'Dale used creatively than just be a slot receiver who runs standard routes. They could use a different player there. But I would think Cooper Kupp wants to be somewhere where he is competing. He's won a Super Bowl, let's see. Down the stretch. R0B, what's up? Good to hear from you. Checks in with the super chat. Says, what's good, Pat? How do you feel about all the moves thus far? And what do you see us doing at quarterback? Is moving to one in play, or is Sanders likely? All right. R0B, thank you for the super chat. And let's do a quick recap to answer where everything stands here and now. All right. How do I feel about the moves? I feel like they have made targeted additions at positions of tremendous need. I think they've shown urgency on defense and a lack of it on offense. They obviously showed urgency on offense with the Stafford pursuit, but they remain without a quarterback, which is concerning and is really the point of the whole thing, right? I do think they're drafting a quarterback high. Do they end up getting it with the second round pick, or trading up into the back half of the first, or using number 3, or trading to number 1? It's all on the table. R0B, I think personally, you can easily make the argument that it's best for them to draft a quarterback at 3. And you can also convince me it's best to add a player and then get the developmental quarterback somewhere else in the bottom of the first or early second or third. It's It's fine to force a quarterback if you believe he's the guy, but you don't just draft a quarterback or force a quarterback to draft a quarterback. So that's where it becomes a question of how do they have them ranked? What do they feel guys are worth? I said earlier, remember last year, they tried very hard to trade up for Drake May. They wanted Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams if they were going to get him. So they did try, and they had guys they wanted to take there, but they didn't just draft Penix, McCarthy, or Bo Nix. Even, and obviously there are some people who feel like they should have, but they didn't just draft a QB to draft a QB, even though they clearly needed one. They drafted a receiver, Malik Neighbors, there. So is that precedent that this year they could, have certain ones they would obviously take and certain ones they don't? R0B, I said earlier, I'll say again, Chauncey Golston of the Cowboys is my favorite signing. 3 years, $19.5 million. Basically a good player that Dallas couldn't afford to pay starter money as he was in their rotation as a backup. He's played all over the line, but is really a defensive end, like a rotational player, is a defensive end and an edge. And Dallas had drafted Marshawn Nealon last year in the second round. They have to pay Parsons. They pay CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott already. So he's like one of those kind of good finds, frankly, by the Giants, I thought, in kind of zeroing in on that player. So I really like that signing and that player. But I think Adebo is kind of, we'll see on the health. He's a grabby, penalty heavy player, but he also has been known to play at a high level. He's long. I've talked to some evaluators, say he's very quick downhill. And Javon Holland has been a playmaker, but also has had some rocky times recently. So improved on paper on defense, waiting to see what comes on offense. I still don't think the O-line is good enough, and they need to keep throwing bodies at both the offensive and defensive lines, in my opinion. Trade to one. Yeah, anything's on the table for the quarterback. Anything's on the table for the quarterback, I think. I can't sit here and tell you, something won't happen like that. All right, wrapping up, Stanley says, hey, Pat, signing Rodgers is just like the Knicks signing LeBron James. They would be signing the biggest diva in sports. LeBron's won a lot of titles, though. Rodgers has only won one in LeBron's defense. PJ says, do we think Kyler actually gets moved? What would the cost be on an Anthony Richardson flyer? I would not be interested in an Anthony Richardson flyer, frankly, and still curious to see if someone's going to call and get a hard no on Kyler. Haven't heard that anyone has yet, but I think it would be interesting if someone did. Simeon says, thanks, Pat. Congrats on the guests. Appreciate it. Rookie Move says, thanks, Pat, for all you do. Thank you for being here, Rookie, and for contributing. Jay says, with not signing a legit guard, do you see their plan to really let Neal get the spot, sort of like how Becton got his career back on track? I think they like Kubas a lot, but maybe Neal competes in that rotation. I felt all along like Shane was talking as if Neal wasn't even going to be on the team. He didn't say that, but he kept saying, like, our team's going to look a lot different in a few weeks. Our team's going to look a lot different in a few weeks. It just felt, I don't know. It just felt weird. So I'm waiting to see where that's going. I know Jordan reported that they're expected to move Neal to guard, but we'll see. Let's see. Let's see. Thanks, Pat, says Brett. You're welcome. Am I going to Green Bay for the draft and streaming the draft live on YouTube? No, I'll be here in New Jersey, but I may be doing an event around the draft, like prior to the draft. So stay tuned for more announcements and information on that. Christian says, appreciate these late night lives, Pat. You got it, Christian. I love doing them. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. Does Golston signing put more pressure on Kayvon to where they could maybe move him before the deadline? Maybe. Ideally, you'd like to create like a great productive rotation and then figure out Kayvon down the road. But maybe it allows you to think about Kayvon in that way if he continues to play at the, level he's been at. Would a guy like CJ Mosley help on the vet leadership side like Wagner did for Washington? Possibly. Like I said, the Giants haven't shown, there are people with the Giants who don't have a high opinion of Bobby Okereke's value to the roster. So could they make an addition and subtract there? Could they create competition there? That, wouldn't rule it out. I don't know, but I haven't heard anything like that, but I don't disagree with your point. I know Mosley was banged up and injured either most or all of last year for the most part with the Jets. R0B says, thanks, Pat. Got to get you on the spaces again soon, brother. Would love that, R0. Anybody who got here late, you can watch and listen to the full version of this podcast and show on the YouTube channel, PL or NFL, or listen to it on Spotify or Apple. I will be posting it there. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here on Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard. Stay tuned for more special episodes with guests, 2 great ones at least coming up next week, and a great interview with Justin Simmons, free agent safety. Look, even my spotlight is flickering because the battery's running low because we've been going for almost 2 hours and 30 minutes. I can't believe a quarterback signing with the Giants didn't happen. I figured it would happen in the middle of this live, but we'll see you again here soon. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and also hit the like button one more time while we are live. Those likes while we are live help engagement on the podcast and on the page. See you guys later. Go check out my stories and coverage as well at the New York Daily News and all of my social medias. PL on NFL is the handle: Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, everywhere except on X. I'm P Leonard NYDN. Thanks for being here, and thank you especially to our super chatters. We had Daniel, Tuto, Gabe, Chronicles, Joey B, and Chronicles comes back again before R0B caps it off. Remember to support our sponsors. Really, please, if you like this show and you love what we're doing here, our sponsors make it happen. So please support MyBookie, Boom Chaga, Estate 98, and Salaretta's, and we will continue bringing you the content we can here. Thank you, fellas. Thank you, everybody. Signing off from Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard.